A new red line has been drawn in West Asia. Iran has launched a direct attack on Israel. For decades, the two countries have been engaging in a shadow war. They have been attacking each other's assets for decades. But Israel would never claim responsibility, and Iran would be firing from the shoulders of its proxies, much like what's been happening since the October 7 attacks. Lebanon's Hezbollah has been firing rockets at Israel. Yemen's Houthis have been attacking ships linked to Iran or its Western allies. Iran-backed groups in Iraq have been targeting Israel's ally, the US's base in Jordan. It's always been a proxy shadow war, one that exploded over the weekend. Never before has a missile been fired into Israel from Iranian territory. That changed this weekend. Iran attacked Israel with 120 ballistic missiles, 170 drones, 30 cruise missiles. The attack lasted around 5 hours. Air raid sirens went off in 720 locations in Israel. Take a look. Iran says for now it is done, but is Israel? Is Israel looking to wave the white flag, or will the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lead a tit-for-tat attack on Iran in order to buy some more time in office? You see, Netanyahu wants to hit back. So what will Israel's response look like is the question. This is West Asia, this is where Iran is, and this is where Israel is. The shortest distance between the two countries is about 1,000 kilometers. On the route lies Iraq, Syria, and Jordan. Will Israel risk firing a missile that flies over these countries? If not, what really are Israel's options? What is the scale of damage that Israel is looking to inflict? Which places can Israel possibly target within Iran? Will it send jets to bomb Iran? But then again, will Israeli fighter planes be flying over Iraq, Jordan, and Syria? Or will Israel also launch missiles? Look, if Israel's allies are to have their way, we would not need to answer any of these questions. Israel's allies, led by America, want Israel to de-escalate. But Israel's war cabinet is determined to exact a price from Iran. The words of Benny Gantz again. But how exactly? You see, Iran had the option to use its proxies. This is Iran's so-called axis of resistance. Iran backs several Shia groups in Iraq. In Syria too, Iran backs armed groups. In Lebanon, you have the Hezbollah. It is trained, funded, and armed by Iran. In Gaza, you have Hamas, also the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Iran backs them both. In Yemen, you have the Houthis. The IDF claims that over the weekend, 350 rockets were fired from Iran, Iraq, Yemen, also by the Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel does not have such a network of proxies, no groups it can shoulder the attack on. What about allies? The US has already refused to be part of the plan. Reports say US President Joe Biden has told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the US will not be supporting any Israeli counterattack. Also, it will not be participating in any offensive operations against Iran. Netanyahu apparently said that he got the message loud and clear. So Israel is left with limited options. It will have to be a direct confrontation, one solely carried out by Israel. Will it also be Israel's first own attack on Iran? The first attack on Iran that it actually claims. You see, by no means will this attack be a first for Israel. The country is accused of conducting numerous attacks on Iran. In fact, there have been drone strikes, assassinations, kidnappings, cyber attacks. But here's the thing, Israel never claimed any of it. In the year 2022, hundreds of drones were reportedly destroyed at a base near Kermanshah in western Iran. The base was Iran's primary facility for manufacturing and storing military drones. It was struck by quadcopter drones on the 14th of February 2022. The fingers pointed at Israel, but Israeli leadership did not say a word. In April that year, Haaretz ran this story. In May, an IRGC colonel was shot 5 times outside his home in Tehran. Members of Iran's Supreme National Security Council pointed the finger at Israel. In May and June of 2022, 2 Iranian scientists died. Poison was found in their food. Some reports initially claimed that one of the scientists, Ayub Entezari, was working on missiles and airplane turbines for a military research center in Yazd. That story was later changed, made less controversial. Reports said the scientists worked for a civilian industrial company. Either way, the fingers were pointing at Israel. In January 2023, suicide drones struck an Iranian military facility in Isfahan. This facility was reportedly producing advanced weapons. US media reported that Mossad was behind the attack. All of this happened in less than a year. And Israel never claimed responsibility for any of it, just like it has not yet claimed responsibility for the attack in Damascus. The attack, in fact, will Israel's counterattack be different is the question. Also, will it be a limited attack? It's hard to say that. Some experts, however, believe that Israel may choose a limited attack for the time being and launch a bigger attack in a year or so. At this point, it's anybody's guess because the final decision lies with the war cabinet. Will Netanyahu convince the other 2 men to hit in the heart of Iran? And if so, then where? What will be Israel's target? In the lead up to Sunday's attacks, reports said that Israeli retaliation would involve targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. And where are these nuclear facilities? In Zagan, Bafq, Ardakan, Esfahan, Natanz, Fordo, Arak, Bushehr, and Sanjarian. And these are just some of the places. Most of these nuclear facilities are in deserted areas, meaning an attack here will limit civilian casualties. That actually helps Israel. It gets a symbolic point without killing innocents. Something it must keep in mind, given that Israeli Defense Forces' record of civilian casualty in Gaza has been attracting a lot of criticism. What's more, Israel actually has the weapons for carrying out such precision strikes. Ironically enough, this capability was on display in Damascus. The Iranian embassy there is not located in an isolated part of Damascus. You have the embassy of Canada right next door. There are multiple banks around, also mosques, universities. Israel conducted a precision strike. It hit the Iranian consulate building. Will it also conduct a precision strike in Iran? More like a face saver, a tit for tat, just for the sake of it. US media claims that Israel has told the US that it is not, quote unquote, looking for a significant escalation with Iran. It is looking to protect itself, defend itself. But can you trust Netanyahu with not crossing the red line is again the immediate question. You see, a wider war helps Netanyahu. The Israeli Prime Minister is looking at some really low popularity ratings. He built a career on the promise of security, only to find himself in office when Israel was faced with its biggest attack in history on the 7th of October 2023. What did Netanyahu do? He sent troops into Gaza. He pledged to obliterate Hamas. 6 months on, Hamas is nowhere close to being dismantled. What's more, Hamas is holding Israeli hostages, and Israel finds itself with a genocide case in the International Criminal Court. At home, protests are growing against his handling of the Gaza war. Israelis want him to step down. Netanyahu is also losing international allies. The US appears to have lost patience. Once the war in Gaza ends, Netanyahu would have to face accountability. But as long as the war continues to rage, continues to escalate, Netanyahu is more or less insulated. Earlier in April, suspected Israeli strikes went ahead and struck the Iranian consulate in Damascus without informing the US. Netanyahu is a seasoned leader. He knew such an attack will risk a lot. It will risk a regional escalation. He knew there would be consequences. He also knew that the attack on the consulate could possibly trigger the wider war. That did not stop the attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. So what is the guarantee that Netanyahu will not risk a wider war? But can Israel really afford such a war? Can it afford to fight Iran? The war in Gaza has been on for over 6 months. Iran has a standing army of at least 580,000 troops. You also have 200,000 trained reserve personnel. Either way, a response, limited or otherwise, is bound to escalate the situation. On Sunday, Iran warned of a much bigger assault on Israel should Netanyahu respond. Let me just read out what the commander of the IRGC, Hossein Salami, told the Iranian state TV. We have decided to create a new equation, which is that if from now on the Zionist regime attacks our interests, assets, personalities and citizens anywhere and at any point, we will retaliate against them. The Chief of Staff of Iran's armed forces, Sardar Bagheri, has already declared, and I'm quoting, if the Zionist regime responds, our next operation will be much bigger. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.